Happy Monday night, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the Cluster Puck podcast. After dark, I suppose.
Yeah, late night session.
Part of the MHRT network here at Center Ice. I am Nick. Beside me here, as always, is Brit. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Very, very good. You got any fun plans for the rest of the week?
No, Mac's going back to school, so kicking him
back to
out.
school week.
Yeah, it's really hot, so I feel like there's a good chance they're going to cancel school anyways, so we'll see.
They cancel school for it being too hot?
Yeah, a lot of them don't have like proper air conditioning because they shouldn't be in school when it's that hot, but it was like 104 today, so.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's
disgusting. Wow. See, growing up in Utah, I always thought that I would have snow days. Because it snows, absolute crap. No, there have been times where you could have 3-4 feet of snow on the ground and they still expect you to school by the time the bell hits at 8 o'clock. Like my childhood, I never had a snow day. What's that?
They've been way more lenient since Mac's gone in school, and I don't know if it's because did they build in snow days for the kids now, so I think they're not as worried about it. Like they don't mind using them.
Could be. I don't know.
Yeah,
I haven't figured that out, but. Back to school week, huh? That should be kind of fun for the afternoons, though.
Yep. Third grade. That's the big one, right? He's pretty excited.
Very good.
And his teacher is a very, very pretty young basketball player. So she was apparently like a basketball star at the college here, but he was a little when I told him that's who his teacher was going to be. So.
Very fun. Very good. My wife and I, our anniversary is on Friday, so we're gonna go enjoy a nice weekend, some nice place to eat, do some fun things. So we're gonna have a good time. Very excited.
Fun.
Yeah. So, okay. Before we get into the nitty gritty, we'll go ahead and give us our sign on here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow the MHRT network so you can get notified when shows just like the Cluster Puck podcast go live. So you can get notified when all of the content that is produced comes out. We have shows every day. The network is just growing at an outstanding rate. It's great to see all these new shows come on. Awesome stuff. You'd love to watch it. So we recommend that you go check out other shows on the network. If you want to follow us, you can follow us at Cluster Puck Podcast on Facebook, and then at Cluster Puck Avs on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. Okay, so let's kind of jump into some topics here. So first off, for those of you who are watching this or are watching this after the fact that it has gone live, Brit has these fantastic ideas as far as topics, because it would be things that I'm like, oh, I didn't even think of that, but they are very, very like just perfect topics, especially when there's this downtime that you don't really think about these things, but Brit does. Right? She's our creative genius right now. She's the one who gets the content pumping. So everyone give her some love in the comment section and DM us as far as your appreciation for her. But let's kind of talk about this first one that you had here as far as the NHL Pipeline rankings and what the Avalanche are doing as far as that. Why don't you walk us through kind of that idea?
Okay, so I'm trying to find my thing. So they was it The Athletic? I remember I had said, I think it was The Athletic, but there's a comprehensive like grading of prospects every year. I don't know exactly. There's a lot that goes into it, like a lot more, because it's hard. And I'll get into this too when we have like more scouting discussions, especially with some guests that we might have coming up here. There'll be a lot more scouting discussions. But the problem with prospects and like amateur scouting, from how I can see it, is that it's hard to compare them on multiple levels. Like, how do you compare when you're looking to draft somebody that's 16 or they start scouting when they're Connor Bedard and they're like 9, comparing this 9-year-old to focusing on this like 12-year-old or this 18-year-old or 16-year-old, the levels vary. And this will kind of tie into our next topic too. The style and like the style of the leagues vary. Like if you look at the Canadian junior leagues versus like the USHL or collegiate, all of these things, they vary so much. So like in college, you can't fight. And like we're going to talk about next, the Q now you can fight, but before you could, in the USHL, they've got some fighting, but they all just kind of have different focuses. you know, the you'll see in the collegiate like a little more finesse, more brute strength than other leagues. But how do you compare different styles, ages, demographics? Like all of these things are hard to compare. So I don't really know like the exact things that go into it, but essentially it's believable. Everybody, the top people seem to all buy into this discussion. So the Avs rated 25th, which out of 32 teams, which I am happy to say the last time we discussed this on the prior one, I believe we were 30. So apparently our college
Moving up
helped us a lot. Yeah. And it's also weird too that I don't know what exactly the term prospect means. Like, do they have to be, we just have to have their rights? Like guys that we don't even know if they're coming. Like, I think that there's some people that we still own their rights, but we know that they have no anticipation of coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So it is curious, but we're all, and just long drawn out sentence short is we're all pretty aware that the Avs have a relatively thin prospect line. And that's part of winning a Stanley Cup is you make those sacrifices. Mm-hmm. I guess my way to look at it is I kind of take that comparison to Tampa. Tampa hasn't given a shit about a draft pick for 4 years and maybe even longer. And I think that as fun as it is to watch guys develop, like, and follow them and get so excited for them after Sample Ranta, I pretty much just solidified that, like, I'm not falling in love with prospects anymore because it hurts. Mm-hmm. Who knows if he's coming back? Sampo's now in Europe. Mm-hmm. It's just like I'm a lot more bought into the fact of utilizing, especially after the first round. Statistically, the guys that actually make it to the NHL is so low that I would almost prefer to see us use those to bring in either more tenured, predictable, which we know that our pro scouting is bomb in comparison to our amateur scouting. So we're good at finding those guys. And also that occasional gamble where you end up with like a nuke or the Drouin, stuff like that. I'm fine with trading 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks for that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And maybe in like 5 years, I might feel differently. But if we can keep refilling our prospect pool, it doesn't concern me too much. It's kind of interesting that we see Tampa doing the same thing. I mean, we really have followed Tampa closely, like our modeling in so much. And at least they'll fail before us, right? So maybe we can still turn the ship around. If
we can see what happens to them, and then
we can
make a decision from there.
We'll damage control like 1 year early because we'll see.
There you go. That's exactly it.
But yeah, I think that's kind of my my take on it. I don't know. How do you feel about this status? It's kind of getting more depressing though. Just one little tidbit is like the Who's to Sananen sounds like he's probably not going to be an NHL player or at least a starting goaltender, excuse me. But and he was, I mean, did I make too big of a deal out of it because I love goalies? But he was like we were really excited about him for a while there. Like he was going to be a big deal. And it just sounds like that might just, might not be the thing.
Yeah. It is an interesting statistic that like the Avalanche prospect, I guess, how is it exactly phrased? I think they rank 25th in pipeline rankings, I think is where the official language goes. And that goes from everyone from the Colorado Eagles on down to even scouting. It seems like, so they include everything, including my Utah Grizzlies, our Utah Grizzlies. Let's be real. It is a bit, I shouldn't say shocking because it's not shocking, but it is a little surprising that the Avalanche aren't any better in that prospect pool / pipeline area. Now, the reason I could see them being that low is exactly what you said, because for the last 5 years or so, however long it's been, we've really only had 2-3 call-ups that stuck in the Avalanche, in the big leagues, right? Bo Byram and Alex Newhook come to mind, for example. And then you have those other prospects that ended up working, like Nichushkin, like you said. I can't help but wonder, same as what you said, because the Avalanche, their new style, I guess we could call it, is finding already played in the league players to bolster up depth. That's exactly how we won the Stanley Cup, right? We didn't rely on our young guys, even though they did play. We relied on people that were matured in the league, had plenty of playing experience, all that kind of jazz, to go out and be a successful team. Now, my concern with that is that's the only reason I think that we can continue to do this, because it can't last forever, right? But the only reason I feel like we can continue to do this now is because we are still a successful team.
Yeah.
We are a kind of a desired destination, so to speak. There's going to be a lot of people that want to still play for the Avalanche, go to the Avalanche, because our window has opened up ever since probably the bubble hockey, right? Back in 2020. And that's kind of when the window began to open. We won a cup, obviously, during the window. So usually that buys you another 3-4 years. Why, even though you're 3-4 years so removed from winning a cup, you still have that, I guess that way you carry yourself as far as the team goes, saying, hey, we recently won a cup, we're still very successful, all that kind of stuff. So that's where I feel like, because you are doing that, that's how you're selling yourself. You losing that same selling point on the lower tier hockey, specifically talking about the Eagles, the Grizzlies, prospects, and it goes on down the line. Is it a good thing? I mean, like you said, it's working so far, but at some point, like you said with Tampa, it will come to an end, right? At some point, the
which is essentially when the ELC is making bank. Having players pop off in an ELC is how you can stay under the cap. And that's the problem I think that Tampa's running into, is you need to have a guy making $825,000 that ends up becoming a solid second or third line player. And it's when they get out of that ELC that, you can't pay everybody real NHL player money.
Yeah. Yeah. And another reason I kind of thought, looking at prospects, for example, you look at who has not been good, right? The Avalanche for the last however many seasons have made the playoff, which means they're top half of the league at minimum, right? Which means they don't get to have as good a chance to go for after a first round pick or even a high first round, unless like a massive trade comes out. So they're kind of short stocking their resources that they can grab from, which it's kind of like this circle of life type deal. You do well, you can't pull up your prospects, and then it starts to teeter like this, and
well,
then
and that's
eventually
like
when
the Wild and the Stars. I mean, the Stars less so, but the Wild have been stuck in like this perpetual mediocrity since inception, it seems. I mean,
exactly. Well, and
they just would always beat us in the playoffs and then get beat. Like, that's all they ever
do. That's all they would ever do, and that seems to be their thing, where they just there needs to be this time, kind of like with what the Avalanche had. You have to get over. You either have to make progress or digress. You can't
rebuild.
Exactly. Retool, redo something to change the image of your team, which the Avalanche, for example, did as soon as they went. After all these depth players in 2022 and won the cup, right? So obviously they'd taken us last season, they'd make it out of the first round, but still a playoff caliber team, still very high. Like I said, they still have that echelon of post cup elite status, I guess. I kind of want to say.
People know that the Avs, and I'll say this, they're built for the future. Vegas is not. I mean, there's a difference between the Avs status and Vegas status. I really do believe that.
Yeah. And kind of like with what Ali says here, the Penguins have zero prospects, right? Because of who they've been kind of going after that same concept, and their pool is just, it's obsolete.
Well, and I've got the last 8 here for you, and what the teams that are on there makes it such a clear indicator that to be successful, you have to destroy your pipeline. So at 25, it's the Avs, 26 is the Knights, 27 is Toronto, 28 is Edmonton, 29 is the Penguins, 30 is New York Islanders, which WTF. 31 is Tampa, and 32 is Boston. So that's essentially every cup contending team within the last 3 years. Is
exactly.
For the Hurricanes, my God, they're I don't know. I'm really worried about them being too good. So, but yeah, I mean, and some of them haven't even won the cup and they've drained it. I can't believe that the Rangers aren't on there.
Well, and you look at who has sold out for these types of things, right? Like the Avalanche had to basically go all out last season or 2 seasons ago, excuse me. Tampa,
Toronto.
we know, has gone all out. Toronto, all these players, all these teams that you listed off have, with the exception of the Islanders, that was just kind of poor management in my opinion, but they have sold out.
I mean, the Penguins are they're just riding it till Crosby's gone, and they owe it to him to surround him with at least some possibility of success. The Carlson thing will forever be so weird to me, but
I'm sad about that still.
Once Crosby and Ovechkin are gone, I think we're going to see the greatness of the Caps and the Penguins. I think they're going to burn those down. Like
I'm expecting a quick digression after that happens. But adversely, I was gonna say adversely, you look at a team like Chicago, right, who won the cup 10 years ago now, even 8 years ago, right? They had that little slew of cup wins. But let's call it 10 years ago. Then they rode this wave of mediocrity essentially, but it just kept going down until obviously they hit the basement. But now look at their pool, right? They landed Connor Bedard, for crying out loud. But
who on earth doesn't want to go there now? I mean,
exactly. Now that you've landed Connor Bedard, eventually it's going to have that same McKinnon effect, McDavid effect. People are going to want to now play around those types of players because of the fortune that they had to pick first, or a high pick, let's say. So it's the circle of life as far as, you have your highs, you have your lows, but eventually it does have to happen, because if you ride in mediocrity, then you have front office change, player, coach change, anything to break the cycle, right? Because that's the thing. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, or doing different things and expecting the same result. Or no, sorry, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. That's my apologies. So that's kind of where the Avalanche now sit. They have this cycle where they're up. Their pipeline is bleak, and it's scary to think if something happens like last year, where you had to piece together some team using whatever resources you had, aka you became the Colorado Eagles in the NHL. And they luckily made it work because the skill level of those who were still there was enough to carry them.
Yeah, we're just lucky Mikko Rantanen can carry a whole entire NHL team.
Pretty much, right?
Alone.
But it's not going to happen every time, right? So you always do want to shore that kind of stuff up, but it's hard to do when all you're doing is going after people who already had NHL experience and just keeping those guys in a constant cycle throughout your team. And like you said, with the Wild, they'll always be that level where they can make it to the playoffs and come in with just this loud, boisterous, here we are, and then never make it out of a first or second round.
And that's what I thought, that they might burn it down this year, with the cap constraints that they have for the next 2 years. I think I can't remember the exact amount, but it's something like 13 million. It's, I believe, over 10 million. And I mean, could you imagine just having to eliminate McKinnon from the team, or eliminate 2 $5 million players and try to operate around that? So
bye Kaprizov.
Yeah, it seems like it should be a good time for them to burn it down, but I don't know. I guess doesn't seem that they don't plan to, but we'll see. But yeah, honestly, I would take the cup and then a couple hard runs and then 3 or 4 real crappy years over just losing in the first round. The Wilds. Just not. I just don't think it'd be very fun to be a fan of that when there's really what do you get excited about?
And really, the only thing you can say when you do have something like that is, well, look at how many times we've consecutively made the playoffs. It's true.
That get you.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, getting to the playoffs is one thing, but going through the playoffs it's a whole different animal. And that's the problem is, if, for example, you take when the Avalanche won the cup back in 22, now the Nashville Predators, right? They fought tooth and nail to get into a playoff spot, and fortune favored them heavily.
Yeah.
But in a 4-0 sweep, they might as well not even played in the postseason, right? Because they didn't win a game in the postseason. It was just postseason experience was all they really got. Nothing. I mean, like I said, not to throw shade onto Nashville or anything, but when you make the playoff, when you make the playoffs, you know, the expectation from your fan base, from the front office, the coaching, even the ones that you should put on yourself is we are going to win the cup. That is the mentality that
Yeah,
you need to
for
have.
sure.
And as soon as you admit defeat or give up or just show signs of slowing down, and you know, teams will eat you alive, right? That's how playoff hockey is. So if you're, you know, it's difficult to say as far as, like I said, the depth that comes, or the mentality that came with the depth and all that kind of stuff. Eventually it does come to an end. You cannot ride it forever because it only works for so long.
Yeah.
So those are my kind of thoughts on Colorado's depth.
Yeah, and I think most people would agree it's not an exciting pipeline and it doesn't feel great, but it doesn't feel bleak.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's worth riding the joy right now. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe in sacrifices, you know. So even if we're gonna have a
There you
couple
go.
years, you know, maybe yeah. But the problem is with Cale Makar, can we ever be that bad? You know what I mean? When we've got
It's hard to
Makar
see.
and Byram, Nathan's not a baby, but he's not old. I just feel like you always have a chance with people like that. Our core is just too. We'll see.
It'll last for years, you know, especially with McKinnon signing his new contract. I think you have at least until the end of that one. So
For sure.
we still got plenty of time to, you know, enjoy the joys of being high.
Right.
And
That's what
you know,
I
one
don't
of the
think we
highest
should like
teams.
destroy
Yeah, and like I
this
said,
now to build a pipeline.
yeah,
And
I'm not saying, yeah, go after it now. Don't tank now. You still have, I mean, you could win 2, 3, 4 more cups during this window. Like you just need to effectively do what you did in 22. It's going to cost the pipeline, but
right.
you won the cup. And is that not the objective of
Yeah.
hockey?
Yeah.
So my thoughts on it. But speaking of changes in hockey, this was one that I'm very interested, because obviously you playing in hockey and me wanting to just always join in this particular aspect of hockey, even though I am an absolute coward. Fighting. Let's talk about fighting in the NHL. This is kind of the main title of our podcast today. So let's kind of give a backdrop as far as why this topic came up.
It kind of, I've been just kind of going circles with it. I'm like somewhere in the middle of like the good old boys club, like fighting is part of the game. And, you know, I can say I'm thankful to be out of that like really early 2000s with the staged fighting. And although I do, you know, there was some like showness to it. I am somebody that appreciates, I like seeing Connor McDavid, and I like seeing Austin Matthews, and I like seeing Trevor Zegras do wild new lacrosse moves on the ice. And I'm just to a point, and maybe it's because I'm a mom now, I don't know, but I would like for them to be able to put their head down for like a millisecond in order to do something amazing without having their career ended by, I don't know, Truba. So like, as far as like the head hits and the fights, I just have kind of started to warm up more into lessening them, I've been thinking on this because the Quebec Major Junior League, they banned fighting this year, which is kind of a big deal. It's a huge change for them because it is kind of a signature for that league as far as being kind of a deciding factor for like I was saying, when you've got the face of a league, which fighting isn't the face of their league, but it's a league that you can fight, versus guys who are weighing possibly going the NCAA route where there isn't fighting, and it's more of a finesse. So you're generally going to be surrounded more by players who didn't have that interest in fighting, who didn't need to show that they could fight in that league to kind of, you know, work that, to show that, showcase that, or be seen for that, because there's some people who bring that. So it's just kind of changing the face of that. It'll be interesting to see too if that kind of shuffles who might go to college now, because if you can't fight in the queue, maybe you'll just go to college and go there. But it kind of has me concerned. I personally believe in keeping fighting, but it concerns me. So now we're going to have very, very little fighting, and then we allow it in the NHL. And I do believe that you have to learn to fight properly, take a punch, give a punch. So I've just been kind of stewing that if eventually all leagues below the NHL, short of like the AHL, the true upper leagues, if they all eliminate fighting, is it safe to continue to allow them to fight? And is it even possible to eliminate fighting altogether? And something that I wanted to propose as an argument for fighting that it's kind of my sticking point that makes it hard for me to think of dropping fighting altogether is I just think that when you watch other sports, you watch basketball, football, soccer, baseball, you go into your play, you get in the most intense part of the play, and generally that ends up with the relief being everybody spreads and you can go in opposite directions, you can walk away. But the thing is, like, hockey is played on a contained by walls, like an area contained by walls. So there isn't really that like run out space. You know what I mean? When you're continuously indoors, I think that it's a much higher boiling point or a much lower boiling point when you have those literal walls. And I've had a hard time trying to like put this into words, but I really do think that tempers flare so much differently when you are in this confined space. And that my worry is that if we did eliminate fighting, which fighting definitely isn't what it used to be. Fights are ended very quickly now. But if we did eliminate fighting, does that eventually lead to more of those like malicious events, like just a straight up tomahawking to the back of the head, or those like just absolute explosions that end up with people being paralyzed, or you know what I mean? Those ones that you should probably call the police on instead of putting them in the penalty box. So that's my main concern with eliminating it altogether. Not that they're not men, adult men that should be able to control their tempers, but also this, if you've played sports or you watch sports, you know how that passion can make people smart, good people lose control. So that's my main thing with it. But I'm curious to see what other people think. How do you feel about, and maybe there is a line between not eliminating fighting altogether, maybe make the penalties harsher, maybe put a number of fights a season and you get a suspension, just so that it has to be really, really worth it to fight. And also, do you think that fights these days, are they even fights really? Like, is it really worth it? Do guys even get injured fighting, or do they get injured like turning more often than not? I mean, I feel like
they definitely get bloody knuckles. I know that much because they just continue to punch helmets, which is a choice, I suppose. But I guess my opinion on fighting is, I feel like fighting in hockey is like one of its foundation pieces, especially in the NHL, right? Because in the early days, or especially in like the 80s, 90s, that kind of era, fights were the thing, right? Like that was what everyone came to see, right? That's what drew a lot of popularity and stuff like that. Now, obviously, a lot of fighting it was product of like a malicious hit or a cheap hit or stuff like that. Nowadays, they're penalized and even suspended for those types of hits. So the fighting itself only becomes of personal beef nature. Does that make sense on ice?
Well, you want me to I'll read you those statistics really quick so that you can have that in your head before you bring that. It's so in the last 20 years, the peak of fighting was in 01-02 with 0.65 fights per match. Since then, it's declined down to 0.22 bouts per game. So, I mean, that's like 19% of NHL games featured an NHL fight, which was down by 66%. So it's not the face of the game anymore. But yeah, so just to put that with what you're saying, that it's much more personal than it is show business now.
Exactly.
Angry fights. Yep.
And so kind of going back to what I said is like a lot of people were drawn to hockey because of the fighting, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so violent, this is so and it almost kind of had that Roman Colosseum gladiator effect where you just really wanted to see someone just knock the lights out of somebody else, right? But like you said, as the game of hockey evolved, and as whatever, it's still a rough and tough game. There are still fights. My opinion on it is, yes, the game has gotten safer, and obviously you have the statistics to prove it. Fights have come down per match. but I am still of the belief that you should have fighting in hockey. And again, not because of now the entertainment factor, which obviously you still want that, because you know,
Right.
you always want to have some kind of emotional investment in the game. And obviously, like, for example, whenever McDermott squares up with somebody, I'm always just, you know,
Yeah.
off
But
the
at least
couch, just screaming.
the fight can be the peak of that, and then hopefully you
Exactly.
move past it. Like that whole
It's more
answering the
for
bell
a
concept.
it's
At
more for a
least,
reason.
yeah,
Yeah,
if you let
because
that be
last
the peak and then end it, you know?
exactly, and that's just it. As you said, like in 0102, I think of the, you know, and or in that around that area, I think of the fight between the
Yeah.
Avalanche and the Red Wings, right? That one was pure and unbridled hatred, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays, you have a fight that breaks out. A lot of people, a lot of players pick fights to boost team energy, right? And
Right.
it's even like nothing
Have you
personal,
ever
buddy, but I
felt
need
like
to sock you a
more
couple times to get the team's energy going.
seeing Jamie Benn lose a fight it was like the most exhilarating thing I've ever
Hmm.
felt watching violence. And I can't even watch like MMA. Like I can't watch, and I don't like watching boxing. Like it makes me it gives me the yuck. But that seeing Jamie Benn go down, I mean, that was so much energy that you can't cultivate that. You know what I mean? You can't make
Hmm.
that up. So I think it is an energy thing. And it feels
Yeah.
caveman-ish that it is, but there's something
Well,
about it
and
that's human.
that's just it, is like another reason that I would say keep it in is because of the team chemistry, right? You have
Mhm.
somebody that runs into a goalie, intentional or not.
Right, especially when
Every
they answer
skater
the bell quick.
around that area is exactly rushing to the main offender to just try to land a couple of blows to his face, to
Right, just
just
a
kind of
little
say, hey, you don't touch your
self-policing.
goalie,
Yeah.
teach him a lesson. Same thing with if there's ever like you know, a cheap hit or a malicious hit. As soon as that guy commits the hit, you know there's going to be like the captain, your big guy, whoever it's going to be, is going to be rushing after to the defense of their own teammates. So
Mhm.
like I said, I think the way it is now is fine. I do like the fact that there are fights. It doesn't happen every game, and I don't think it needs to. You still have enough
No, I mean, it's
scrums and
essentially
kind of
like 1
getting
in every
into like
5
this.
games.
Exactly. You still have those scrums and stuff that they'll face wash. They'll chirp. They'll get under people's skin. I like that, right? I feel like
Mhm.
that's a good caliber to have, because not every game has to have a fight. Sometimes there's 7-0 blowouts, and everyone was like, "Okay, yeah, we did a game. Let's go home," right?
Mhm.
Now, as far as the harsher penalty idea, I didn't think so until you actually said they have maybe a certain amount of fights per season, and then a suspension is handed
Yeah.
down. So maybe there is some thing to look in there. I haven't, excuse me, like I said, I haven't looked into it all that much or given it that much thought, but it makes me rethink kind of my initial thought where I said, I don't think there needs to be a change, because, like I said, they usually have their one fight, get all their energy and emotions out during the
And the
fight,
fights are
and
so
typically they're
short these days.
fine. And the refs let it. It's until a guy falls, or until like the refs are like, okay, this is taking too long, and then they call it done. And usually tempers
Yep.
have kind of blown past, cooler heads are now prevailing, and most times there isn't a backup, or excuse me, secondary or even tertiary for that matter, fight.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think, like I said, I really like fighting, because that kind of is one of those foundation stones
Mhm.
in the NHL. But as far as taking it out of, for example, kids or juvenile league, that kind of
Yeah.
thing, that's where it becomes something where it's like for kids, you should not encourage
Right.
fighting, right? Like that's
Right.
obvious.
But as you
But
ease
where does that
into
line hit?
juniors, do you need to
Uh-huh.
learn? I mean,
I think it might be like around high school. That's kind of where, like I said, maybe you don't need to throw punches. Maybe that is for the bigger leagues, but let some kind of scrums happen and stuff like that. But as soon as a punch is thrown, that's where or like an ejection happens or something.
mhm.
And this, like I said, you're introducing them to a more physical style game than what they were used to in their younger years. But like
Yeah.
it is a difficult decision, right? As far as, well, where is the line? Like, Because like you said, if you're playing junior league hockey and all of a sudden you get thrown into the ECHL where literally every game could be a bloodbath. I recall a Grizzlies and Trey Riviere game when they played, and it was, I think almost every player got thrown out of that game. There were just so many fights. Oh, it was beautiful. One of my most favorite, most memorable Grizzlies games. But where's that line? Because if you have a kid that never threw a punch in his life, never got within a scrum in his life, and all of a sudden he checks a guy and that guy didn't like it, and he's coming after him with eyes to kill, what's he to do?
Well, and it's just kind of part of making the game cleaner is, and this is maybe an argument for not fighting or making it less happen less, is the less dirty or like risk injuring hits, fights, stuff like that, intimidation altogether that we have, the more we can probably see some really talented people shine in this league that otherwise just wouldn't, because there's a lot of people that they would look at a piece of paper, and if anybody was under like 5'8", they wouldn't even get a look because of size. And it's what is Connor Bedard, like 5'9"? And so if he hadn't been an absolute phenom, I mean, he probably would have never been looked at. So I think we're really missing out on some people simply because they don't have the size. And maybe if that wasn't such an issue, then we might see the NHL change even more. And I just feel like we would end up seeing a better game altogether if people didn't have to worry about being destroyed, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, the league has taken really big strides to eliminate, for player safety, taking out those types of, punishing those types of hits during play. But I think the fighting is, like I said, it's kind of a necessary evil I guess if I were to sum it up in a couple of words, a necessary evil, just because, yes, it does pose the risk of further injury or unnecessary injury. But the other side of that is obviously there is the entertainment factor. There is the fact that it does allow for temperament to come down and people get their emotions out. It allows for team chemistry to build, energy and maybe a sway of momentum, so there's a lot of different reasons as to why, but it is a tough decision, right? So
that is something we should look at. I'd be curious to know the number of fights. How many of those guys? I would imagine that a very small number of men hold most of the percentage of those fights. You know what I mean? And then there's just like trickled in rounds.
I think of when you talked about Josh Manson's dad and you brought up his penalty minutes.
Oh my God. Maniac.
That's the first thing I was like, he literally probably killed everyone in one game. Like
some guys that like change statistics for an entire league. Like 3 guys are the outliers that change the whole entire.
So anyway, that's kind of my opinion on fighting. I do think it should be kept. I would listen to potential rule changes as long as the tenacity and toughness of the game can still be there.
The Q wasn't going to eliminate fighting, and they've had a lot of pressure. But this says that, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? My thing's gone. They had a rule change. I can't find it now. But basically they did something like what we were talking about. After they had like 3 fights, they got a 1-game suspension, I think. So something to that extent. But basically, that rule change already resulted in a sharp decline in QMJHL. The results were they went from 188 fights in 18-19 to 86 fights. And that was operating under a suspension after a certain number of fights rule. So, I mean, that's a huge drop.
That's a big. Yeah.
And so I wonder if they would have, because at first they went to like a 10-minute misconduct, and then they did the suspension thing. So I bet they would have kept that if they hadn't had so much pressure from outside forces to get rid of fighting. So
totally possible. But let us know in the comments as far as your guys' thoughts as far as fighting goes. Keep it, get rid of it, alter it. Let us know. We're interested to hear your guys' thoughts. Again, don't forget to DM us on our various platforms that we have, but we're very interested to know what your guys' thoughts are, if there's maybe a different point of view that we hadn't thought of. Okay. So moving into just a couple house cleaning items, I guess you could call, is kind of jumping back to those signings with the young people, I guess you could say, the pipeline. There have been a couple of signings and out signings, I guess you could call. But one that does stick out to me is Ryan Merkley signed with who is it? Kunlun?
Kunlun, is that the KHL, right?
Something like that. Let's see.
So he is, just for those that might be wondering, he is the throw-in that we got. With
Kunlun Red Star.
What?
Kunlun Red Star. That's the name of the
KHL
KHL
Kunlun
team.
Red Star. Was that with Manson that we got him? What am I trying? Manson.
That was with the
McDonald.
Sharks trade that sent Nieto and Merkley here, and we traded not Anton Bleed,
McDonald
Kaut, and that was that trade.
I would have loved to have some McDonald in my life last year. Like McDonald was that guy that we definitely could have used, but not so.
So yeah, Merkley. When that trade happened, a lot of people talked about his attitude, right? That was kind of like the main thing that people brought up. But
the only
I didn't hear a peep after he got traded as far as behavior.
I don't think that they liked him with the Eagles, though. There was something they were not fond of him, because I don't think that they even considered him for a moment. That's what it sounded like.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's one of those where you were kind of like, it might have been an experiment. But maybe he just couldn't slot himself into a role within the depths of the Eagles organization, right? So again, it's not one that I'm going to lose sleep over, but it's going to be one that I am always going to wonder, what if, because he had a lot of potential, right? He was
a first round draft pick, wasn't
right?
he? Like,
first round pick, top 10 even.
I think that it was like 7th. That's what.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's always going to be one of those what ifs.
But still, he was a
21st.
But still, it's
we'll say top 10. Yeah. But it's always going to be one of those what could have happened. Like,
Absolutely.
Was there a way we could have utilized him better?
And it just seemed like we're so good with problem children that we should have fixed him. But apparently there are some struggles with his game, and the KHL facilitates a much more inviting game for him. That open ice is something that's going to help him a lot. So we'll see. We don't have his rights anymore, do we? I think it was just, I believe.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's a done, clean deal. So again, I guess, thanks to Ryan and his service for what he did with the Eagles organization. We wish you nothing but the best of luck in the KHL, but it's one of those, the move happened and you kind of just move on. Speaking of, here's a couple of, I guess not moving on, but moving in. The Avalanche did sign Ben Steinberg.
Yeah, I was getting a little contract,
if I'm not mistaken. I have little to no information on this kid.
He has had a wild life. He's had some pretty wicked injuries. He played in college. He had wanted to play in Canada at first, but he did play. His local was the Moosehead, so that's I'm trying to figure out.
That's old Halifax.
What is his college? Goodness sake.
Ben
Cornell?
Steinberg.
Is that where he came from? But it didn't look like we were going to. Sorry, I'm trying to find my.
Oh, you're good. Let's see. No, it was Ben Steinberg, right? Or maybe did I mess up the name?
Matt. Sorry, did I say Ben? I'm thinking Matt. Ben. Or oh my gosh, Matt.
Let's see. Matt Steinberg. I said Ben.
Sorry.
I think I also noted Ben. I think it is Matt. There we go.
There was a great thing about him. So he was a third round draft pick, and we had used a Senators draft pick for that. But he was from Halifax. Like I said, it's McKinnon stuff. So that's why he's kind of been on the radar more, I think. He played for Cornell, and he trying to see, I think he doesn't have like a ton of upside, but it looks like he could be a good like a good depth player. I don't know. I just cannot find it. Because he's got one more year left at Cornell. So he's not going to come. Okay, that's what I was trying to remember, if he was looking at coming. But we were just running out of time to re-sign his rights because we drafted him too long ago. But some people really, really like him. I don't know enough about him. But he's got that McKinnon, tie. I just can't talk right now, apparently. Sorry, I'm like super tongue-tied. But yeah, so that's just another one. I mean, if we're gonna sit here and bitch about the prospect pool and the pipeline, then maybe it's nice to see that we are keeping guys like this, because
maybe we should rejoice for some of these things too. Never, not be the Mr. Pessimist.
It sure does feel though that, and it's kind of funny because we added an edge this year, but we are just a very college heavy team. It seems like we have a lot of a lot of our Canadian or our American and Canadian, like a lot of them played NCAA, which kind of might tie into why we're a little soft and finessey. I don't know.
No, that's exactly right. So, I mean, it's difficult to say because of, like I said, we seem to be picking up these players that we're not. Yeah, there's a gray area. Does that make sense? Like it's not like one of those pickups, for example, like Cale Makar, where he was highly touted. Everyone thought he was going to be good. We didn't know he was going to be this good, but you knew he was going to be good.
Well, and have you heard the discussion on Taylor Makar? Like, he's kicking ass.
It up pretty good too.
And he was not supposed to be like this, but yeah, it might get real fun, like in the next couple of years. And
if we have two Makars on the team,
oh my God,
yes, please.
And I'll take it. I feel like it would be really funny if his number was like 18. So, like, if I don't know, I'm so excited for the thought of having two Makars on the team, even if he's like the most depthiest depth, but it just doesn't sound like he's going to be. But we'll see. It's hard to not have too high of expectations for him.
That's true. And then the last, I guess, possible signing is Ivan Zigalov, who was the goalie that we drafted a couple years ago.
Weird.
His contract terminated in Europe.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a lot of speculation out there, myself included, that he may make some kind of appearance in either the AHL or maybe even the Avalanche. Because he is,
he
showed himself to be pretty dependable in a lot of cases.
Right. And it was like a mutual termination. And he was like, so I read this thing that was like, the Avalanche prospect, Ivan Zigalov, he was happy to go back to, he's playing with a KHL team, like in his hometown, so it should have been a good gig. And the Avs were happy with this. They thought this was a good path. Because I don't know, would he even had the space here to train somewhere well? And the KHL is, kind of a good place to go get your ass kicked as a goalie, probably. And the coach, like, they said that it was a mutual thing. And then the coach comes out and says, Ivan wanted to be number one, but he couldn't stand the competition. For his development, he decided to return to North America. We'll go there. Where specifically? No idea. Like, that tone is pretty... It sounds kind of pissy pants, doesn't he? Like,
it kind of does.
Who doesn't want to be number one? So I don't know if that, and also there might be translation in that too. But I don't know if he's a crybaby and just wanted to be number one even though he didn't earn it, or if he's just too competitive. I don't know. It's weird. So, and the funny thing is like, so they terminated his contract, but they're like, we're still going to keep your rights, bro. So if you come back, you just can't play here.
Jeez.
So he can't really go back and play anywhere else because they still have his rights, but not a contract. I don't really know how that works in the extra league is what it says.
Extra.
Yeah, it's really weird. And like he was super excited to play there. So I wonder if there's also maybe more to it than what the coach said.
That's possible. But
he
like
was
I
in
said,
the juniors prior to that.
If everything, I mean, ultimately, I really would hope that he does at least stick around on the Eagles squad because, like I said, the guy's 6'3", right?
Yeah.
He's going to be he is your biggest goaltender, if I'm
And he's
not
20.
mistaken.
I mean, he's not a baby.
And
He's a baby for goalie.
A young pup, right? So, like I said, I hope this means there might be a wider path for him to be in the AHL at minimum, and
right. Well, he played for the Frontenacs last year. He played for the O, so it's not like he's coming. But I have no idea what the next. I mean, he's essentially in limbo. I don't know what the next move even looks like for him.
Yeah.
But I mean, we did. Who did we? Keith, didn't we? Who was the? Yeah, he left, didn't he?
I want to say he did, or like he stepped away from hockey, or just went somewhere in Europe, or I can't remember exactly where.
Europe, but there might be like, but it's just hard because you want him to be a third string on the Eagles or playing somewhere else and getting a starting job. But it's just weird stuff.
Yeah, weird. So I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing him on the Grizzlies either.
No, I mean, you got to. I don't know what the balance is between wanting them to take a lot of pucks, but also stay close and play for a good league. I don't know. It's interesting, but
yeah,
we'll be curious to see. I'll kind of keep an eye on that story to see where it goes, if any.
Yeah, definitely interesting to see how it develops and if there is more information that'll maybe sway our opinion or what. But
yeah.
Okay, let's move on then to Hockey 101. So today we're actually going to be focusing on a basic strategy in hockey, believe it or not. And this one, it's going to take up a little bit of time, Britt, so we're going to have to postpone the player spotlight until next week.
Yeah, we're pushing an hour. Sorry.
But we could talk an entire hour on this guy alone, and we'll keep it we'll keep it for you for next week, and we won't spoil the surprise. But I think it'd probably be in the best interest that we give him his duly deserved time since he has been around the league for quite a while. There's your hint, guys. Okay, so this particular hang on, let me get my screen up ready to share. Okay, I have this beautiful drawing here. So this particular strategy is a forecheck strategy. So for those of you who don't remember, a forecheck is when you have lost possession of the puck to the opposition. This little black dot's the puck. Here's your other guy. And you are trying to get it back while you're in your offensive zone. Okay. So this style, so to speak, or the name of this strategy is called a 1-2-2, or at least that's how you're playing set up, right? One solo, two wingmen, and two defensemen. 1, 2, 2. Okay. So the basic idea of this strategy is your solo guy right here. Let's say so you had a dump pass or you lost possession or however you lost it. You're up against these baseboards here, and the opposition. Let's see. Did I lose my mouse? Maybe I lost my mouse. But the opposition got the puck, right? You can tell by this guy in the X has the puck next to him. The basic idea is for your guy right up against the net to pincer him one way or another, right? Depending on which side of the puck he has, to then squeeze him to force this player to skate a certain direction, either that way or that way, right? By chasing him, trying to get the puck back, obviously, but you're trying to keep him against the boards at all times. So let's say for all intents and purposes, he chooses to go this upper side, right? So you have your F1 following the guy up these upper boards on the top. The idea now becomes for you to make a blockade, so to speak, and meet him right there for your F3 man, right? As F1 is still chasing the puck, you're trying to then squeeze him to either block a pass, pressure the pass, whatever it needs to do to make him make a mistake, right? So in order for that to happen, you have to now shore up this middle section that we'll just call number 1, right? So the middle section gets shored up by F2 then playing in the slot. So he'll cover that area. So now you have that that top face-off circle, and near the goalie's crease, that is at least covered in hopes that the pressure can sustain itself and concentrate itself into one area, assuming there has not been a puck kicked out or passed out or something like that. What the defensemen do, D1 and D2, the red dots you see on your screen, they will also begin to play up just a little bit to hopefully, like I said, keep everything contained on the top corner. If I could draw it
and that's what I always explain to my mates, like on the D, kind of like a foosball table where when you're pinching against the boards, your other D is going to come in closer to the middle. They'll move kind of in tandem.
Yep. So in that gray box there, that's the area of containment you're hoping to keep the puck in, right? Usually it's actually, believe it or not, even though there could be quite a few cons with it, it tends to be a pretty effective strategy because it is one of the more common strategies, right? But it's one way you can get...
is done with this sport. That's the thing, is it's getting harder and harder to tell where everybody belongs.
Exactly, right? Now, there are a couple of downfalls, right? Because if you're playing everyone here and all of a sudden he pulls this miraculous pass up against the half wall on the bottom side here. Let me see if I can paint that, or on this bottom side here that we'll label with 2, is if he's able to take that and make that puck go here, he's got this entire area to come with, and everyone on the defense, everyone on the half walls will have to quickly switch sides, and you might not get there in time, and they could kick it out, and you have to reset. So it's definitely a risk that I assume would be worth doing. But like I said, ultimately the idea is you are trying to get the puck back along this half wall. And for those of you, let me give you a quick little lingo lesson here. Half wall, there's no real strict definition of it, but it is commonly understood that it's this wall kind of right here, right around the face-off circle, behind this goalie line, kind of this area. That's kind of the half wall. Right. So you'll have, like I said, your F1, he'll patrol the guy that has the puck at the boards, and your wingers usually will then patrol the half wall, depending on which side it's kicked out. So like I said, this F3 will be the guy to then meet up and give pressure to the defenseman, or now the guy in possession, to try to win the puck back. D2 goes for additional backup, and then your F2 and D1s will slide up into the into the slot. So like I said, quick little forecheck lesson as far as your basic 1-2-2 strategy. But it's been proven effective. So when we do get to watch Avalanche games, I'd like you to pay attention to that, especially when there is a dump pass, which, like I said, a dump pass is where you have a player that he reaches the red line, so icing, and he'll just shoot the puck down in hopes that somebody on their team gets it. So that's essentially it as far as the Hockey 101 lesson is concerned. If you do have any questions,
that you know about this drill maker, when I as a coach have been like drawing them on Microsoft Word or like on Paint or whatever, and this is like a snazzy little thing you got going here. I'm excited to go around with it.
Yeah, if you want to doodle on it, just icehockeysystems.com/drill-maker. Go ahead. This thing's... I doodle on this thing all the time. I think it's quite fun. So
I might.
It's good fun stuff. As long as you have a good stable internet connection, you're golden. So anyways, if you do have any questions about the strategy, or if there's other ways or other questions that you have as far as the effectiveness or pros and cons with it, let us know in the comments, DM us afterward. We'd be happy to kind of explain things. And again, like I said, I'm just still a student of the game, but this is kind of, like I said, as basic an explanation as I can say.
It's essentially the foundation. Most others will revolve or stem from that. And it's kind of cool once you really start being in tune to that, where you can see your team's concept, like their style, and then when you see them break from that and you can actually pick that out, it's pretty cool when you can see that your team is actually doing something different than what they generally do. You can tell that kind of some wheels are moving. I always think that's fun when when somebody can pick out, you know what I mean? Pick out something
Yeah.
like he's not supposed to be there. That's not his position. So I love
Exactly.
seeing new hockey fans kind of notice like that something is wrong. And it's like you're starting to really like grasp the game at a different level. And it all starts from this foundation pretty much.
Exactly. Yep. So like I said, it is an offensive strategy, right? Even though you currently do not have the possession, you are still in your offensive zone, right? So which is why they'll still consider it offensive strategy. But like I said, be on the lookout during a preseason game or even during a regular season game. Look for this 1-2-2 as it's set up. You probably won't see these two defensemen if it's up here or whatever. But just know that they will always have that sort of a rotation. Some teams use this 1-2-2, others use what's called a 1-3-1. You know, there's a couple of different styles, but this is the basic formation that most strategies would revolve around as far as an offensive forecheck is concerned. So, so that concludes the lesson. As far as Hockey 101, hopefully you guys did learn something. Again, it's a little more in-depth, a little more advanced, but we think obviously with the lessons that we've given, we think, well, obviously you guys are ready for it. So other than that, that concludes, I think, the episode, Britt. I don't know if you have anything else.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, awesome. Well, once again, everyone, thank you so much for sticking around, especially if you were on the East Coast. You're probably in bed at midnight for you guys actually right now, but little late night episode never hurt anyone. You got to have those every now and again. Some cluster puck after dark. It's good stuff.
We're getting close this season, though. We'll be back in our normal.
We'll be back in our mid-season form by the time the season begins, and you guys will be hockey experts. We believe it 100%. So, thank you once again, everyone, for following the Cluster Puck podcast, for sticking with us through this episode. Or if you catch us the following day, give it a listen, give us your feedback, message us, whatever you want to do. Let us know your thoughts on it. Don't forget again to like and subscribe and follow the MHRT network so you can get notified when shows just like the Cluster Puck podcast go live. We have shows every day on the network. If you want to follow us, you can follow us specifically at the Cluster Puck podcast on Facebook, Cluster Puck Avs on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. And with that being said, we wish you adieu. Have a great night. And as always, go Avs go.
Thank you.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go. Hustle hard.